You guys, I'm on the struggle bus today. Okay, so you are here, and this is us. Okay, now why can't I just start slideshow from here? And then do that. Okay, we're making progress. Yes. Okay, because you know what was happening? You know how you could see people's faces? That's all I could see. Couldn't even see the presentation. So that makes it fun.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know my content, but not so well that I don't want it right in front of me. Okay, so let's get, oh, why did it do that? We need to go back and I get excited too fast because now it's not working again. Okay, it's fine. So we're gonna do it a different way. I'm gonna pull up the video from here, and then I will just share the video. This is a fun little video that talks about the pitfalls of research. Now, the video will talk about some sampling errors. We will discuss sampling obviously shortly, but the rest is still quite salient to what we just discussed. You guys can all see the world of bad survey design?
Yep.
Okay, now we may have the issue about sound, right? Share sound. There we go. This should work.
Some say that running opinion polls has never been easier, and with the help of the internet, companies can now collect thousands of responses within just a few hours. Sadly, this quantity does not often come with quality. There are plenty of terrible surveys around us, polls with unrepresentative samples, loaded questions, bad design, and fake polls interested only in stealing data. Let's meet the four inglorious characters of the world of survey design craft: the shaman, the hunter, the mage, and the rogue. The shaman embeds polls in social media like Twitter. Despite collecting responses from a large number of people, only Twitter users will have the chance to respond, and people who are online more will be far more likely to reply. This creates a biased, unrepresentative sample. The hunter is very clever and wants to design surveys to make their client happy with a positive result. They specifically hunt for people who will provide favourable opinions, using strategies such as free product samples or vouchers. It's hard not to like free stuff, but it's also hard to believe the opinion of 30 or so carefully selected people. The mage uses magic powers to make people think in a certain way, to support a certain political agenda or a marketing campaign. This is also known as push polling. Push polling magic is not used to find out what people actually think, but to change people's minds with loaded questions and biased response categories, to make people alter their responses and thus their opinions. And the worst of all, the rogue, the master of stealth, a quiet assassin who might leave you empty-pocketed or even steal your identity. Beware of fake surveys which pretend to be legitimate in order to steal your personal information. Any proper online survey will use a secure web page starting with HTTPS and will never ask you to provide sensitive information like a bank account number or insurance number. Don't trust numbers coming from these inglorious characters and don't get involved in their polls. Leave them in the world of fantasy.
All right. What do you guys think?
I didn't know about the fake polls, but I mean, there are scams and everything, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
I did like their analogies. I thought that was cute.
It's a fun one. Yes.
But
So,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I thought I mean, like, I've seen the like the hunting ads all the time. Like the whole like, oh, free if you like just do this. Like you just have to do this tiny little thing and you'll get free.
Right.
And so it makes sense where that's only getting a select number of people that want that. So they're-
Well, and oftentimes they'll even give you the item for free and then ask you to review it. That's often seen, I feel like, with influencers who are, I mean, it's just all over, right? They're like, oh, look, I'm just doing a clean my house video. And they're like, I use this. And you should know, I mean, they always have to disclaim it. The company did give this to me, but I would have bought this myself. Otherwise, it's so amazing. But how much are we trusting this review if you got it for free? Maybe it is truly, amazing. And that is the beauty I find of Amazon reviews, because most often, first off, you have to verify that you've purchased it, right? There's a verification part of that. And you get some of the most amazing reviews. Have you guys read some of them? They're comical. Some of them are really funny, and they're honest. They'll tell you kind of like what it is. And often, they don't have necessarily, there's no point in them lying to make the product better or worse. Because they've not been monetized in any way. They're just getting the product and telling you about it. That's why I get frustrated with Wayfair. Oftentimes people will be like, oh, the shipping was great and was so quick. Yeah, but how was the table? How did the rug feel? Like, that's Wayfair's whole shtick, is to be quick on delivery. Like, I don't think you're going to specific product review to talk about the service of the company anyway. All right, does this make sense? Writing well-worded questions. Anything lasting questions you guys might have about that, or I can help with?
No. So I did have, for like credibility or validity tests, for like question order, what is a good like number of like questions in between, like where it's like, oh yeah, now how do you feel? It's like, do you love or hate taking exams? And then it's like, yes or no. And then like, do you hate exams? And then like, how, like, is that back to back?
Yeah, like repeated questions. How soon should you have? Yeah, so there is an extensive formula you can use usually for that. You do want them spaced out. So that goes beyond kind of the scope of our class, because it's really straight psychometrics. But yes, you want them spaced out, and you want one of the question to be at the back 20% of the test, and the other one to be in the front probably 20% of the test, because then you're getting people at their freshest and that they're most fatigued. So that's where there can be inconsistencies in responding. But yeah, they do that. It's systematic. You don't just go, oh, randomly, let me ask about that. Okay, I think we've got a question. A push-pull, is that what you're asking? Push-pull is if you're being forced into a specific response. Is that what you meant? Somebody asked about that. Let me make sure I understand the question.
Yeah.
Were you seeing that on the last slide?
No, the video said push pull.
Oh, it is literally like you're forced into a certain response. So they're not asking you, it's not like Family Feud. Oh, that's the other video I wanted to find during it's okay. I'm having technology issue. It's going to just break on me if I go away from this slide. Yeah, so it's not like the Family Feud style where you respond to anything you want. You're being forced into a specific response. Okay. Encouraging accurate response. Obviously, if we want a valid representation of our respondents' opinions or viewpoints, we want them to respond accurately. In order to be able to give meaningful response, you have to try to take away most, if not all, judgment away from questions, so that people are not feeling like, well, I really need to write this because it's making me feel real bad about myself if I write something else. Okay. Another way to be mindful of accurate response is in regards to consistency, what we were just talking about. So you can use reverse wording so that you avoid this exact thing. See, what did this individual do?
They went all strongly agree. Boom, 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 boom.
Okay. So, and the questions are, in most ways, my life is close to my ideal. Yeah, wife works too. The condition of my life are excellent. I'm satisfied with my life. So far, I've gotten the most important things I want in life. If I could live my life over, I would change almost nothing. Okay. Now, it is possible that this participant means these responses. What else could be happening?
They're just trying to fly through the survey.
Right. And so they're just like, well, the first one's this, just can this be done? Right. And they're going down. And because they didn't do any reverse coding, we have no way of knowing whether that's what happened or whether they're honestly responding. Could be either. So that is why it's important that we include reverse wording as part of our questions. Now, reverse wording does not mean a double negative question like the poorly written questions we were talking about. It's just finding an opposing adjective or statement and then making sure that that's listed in there as another option so that you can see how people respond. Okay, so response set, we just said. Now, yay saying, that's another big piece. So that no matter what the question is, the individual is responding in a positive way. So it's saying yes or strongly agree or agree to everything, to a number of items, looking instead at just a broad positive response instead of specific items and how they differ. So this would be another example. This is a yay saying example because they're saying strongly agree to everything. All right, and fence sitting, that is saying, I don't have strong feelings about it either way. So I'm just going to put neutral all the way down. What is a way to avoid that?
You could have it like yes or no questions and some true or false.
Right. So it's removing that middle ground. So if you look at as this one as an example here, you could see slightly disagree and strongly, slightly agree and strongly. You could remove this middle one. So you are forcing them to go one direction or the other. I would say this is actually a pretty terrible question here. There's too many levels. Slightly versus full versus strong. I don't know. I would just have strongly disagree, agree, strongly agree, simplify it a little bit more. But that's just me. All right, so that's fence sitting. That's somebody who is only reporting the middle response because they don't want to commit either way. That is the classic, I don't know the right answer. I'm going to mark C. I don't know. Could be something else. All right. All right, faking when you are providing responses. We've talked about this. It's if you're trying to present a certain way, if there's some sort of secondary gain for you responding in one way versus another, you are not going to get accurate results. So if you are attempting to look good in any way, if there's some sort of desire to report in a more favorable way, people are going to do that. For instance, let's say you're like, this whole dating via COVID, it's hard. I can't meet people. I can't take them out. So I'm going to dabble in online dating. And they're like, oh, fantastic. Join us. We'll waive the first month. I don't know how it works, but anyway, join us before you begin. And we match you up with these amazing local folks. Take a questionnaire. How accurate are those responses going to be? What do we think? You're trying to find your soulmate. Maybe that's not what you guys are looking for right now, but somebody to spend some time with in a romantic way. Are you going to be like, yeah, I'm super lazy. Procrastination's a major issue in my life. I don't have a job. School, just kind of all right. I'm a slob. I don't cook. I don't work out. Right? How likely are we going to be that brutally honest?
Probably not.
Probably not. I mean, if you are, kudos. And I'm not saying anybody's any of those things, right? But if you're trying to meet somebody that you want them to like you in a dating way, you may want to let them find out some of those negatives on their own few months down the road, right? You're not going to be like, I'm going to lean in with my flaws. Usually that's not what people do. So questionnaires about matching up people and eHarmony, that was a big deal. They probably got started in the 2000s. the founder of eHarmony, was also, I think he was a professor at Azusa Pacific University when I was teaching over there out in California. And so we had access to some of the data they had gathered, but there's a lot of questionnaires to try to match up people, right? Because it's a metric. And so it's based on interests, your values, your morals. They try to match you up. But if you're not honest about it from the get-go, how effectively are you going to be matched? You're not, right? Or you're going to be matched to somebody else who also was not honest about it, and then perfect match made in heaven. Maybe that's
Also, fun fact about matchmaking services.
yeah.
The person who made Match.com lost his girlfriend to someone she met on Match.com.
No,
Yeah.
that's funny and
I know.
kind of that's weird karma. That's very. I guess that's a testament to how good it is.
I know.
Maybe, although as the founder, I'd be like, shut it down. You're not going to have an account if you're dating me. You have found your match.
I know. It's just a little anecdote of just karma, irony.
Yeah, that's weird. All right. So that would be responding in a faking good way or in a socially desirable way. This is often seen also for job interviews, right? Take a quick questionnaire about who you are. My biggest flaw is I'm a perfectionist and I tend to overwork and work 15 hours a day, right? Classic. The jig is up. They kind of know that's what people always say. So being honest is going to be more valuable. Faking bad is another way that you can get inaccurate results. So again, in our day-to-day interactions, the idea of faking bad, that seems like such a weird thing to do. But if you think about forensic psychology, like I was talking to you guys about, I think a few weeks ago, if you've been arrested of a crime and you pretend you have mental illness symptoms or mental health issues, you'll be placed in a state hospital rather than a prison, which is safer. You have more freedoms, better food. Oftentimes they're co-ed. It's just a different level of treatment, right? So you may be tempted to fake bad in order to get yourself into a state hospital. Let me see, was there another one? No, I think that's pretty much all the example I want to give you about that. Okay, self-reporting, you can also have folks who are reporting more than they know, right? So somehow you're just like, oh yeah, I know all about this. What would be an area where you might see that?
I could definitely see that in like age group wise, high schoolers, thinking like, oh yeah, I know all the trends that are happening. I know exactly what the
Right.
world is. It's a great place. Oh man, everything is and like
Yeah.
you can make great claims and not
Yes.
have any evidence.
Good. What is an area where you might be taking a questionnaire where you have to be looking out for that, for somebody pretending to know more than they do?
A great one would be about like what is the best insurance? If a high schooler doesn't know insurance, they're not like, oh, these rates are great.
Right.
So
Very
I'm
true. Yeah.
just guessing.
Any other thoughts? Oh, looks like we've got a response in chat here. Healthcare. Say what you mean by that, Noella.
Field.
What do you mean by that? Like a doctor pretending to know more than they do? Here's a scary thought.
Yeah, it's like with the diseases, there's always new ones, and they like may say, "Oh yeah, you have this," but you normally don't have the disease they're explaining. Like I had my physic, my one of my doctors saying I had some disease, and when I went to a different one, he said it was like a bug. So it was like completely different from the one they told me the first time, and I was taking like random pills for no reason.
Oh gosh, what a pain. Yeah, so that would be something else. So when we're thinking about the realm of survey making, right, and gathering data via surveys, if somebody is self-reporting, they're right? Because you're taking a survey, that's a self-report. You're reporting more than you actually know. That would maybe fall again in the trying to look good. So in job interviews, that may be happening. And another area is if you get somebody who tells you that they like a certain thing, or they follow a certain company, or they only buy products from fill in the blank company, and they tell you all these reasons why, but it's not stuff they've researched, they've just heard about it. And so they're not speaking necessarily intelligently about it. The example in your textbook is about the brand of yogurt. And oftentimes people are very loyal. There's so many brands, right? Like this picture, I think, is kind of mind blowing if you see all the different brands of yogurt. And they may go, well, I buy this one because fill in the blank, right? Well, it's shown to have more probiotics than the leading, other brand of yogurt, or it has less sugar, or it's actually a taste, it's less fatty, right? Whatever they may think, they insert. And instead of just saying, well, that's the one I like, or that's the cheap one, they're inserting more knowledge than they actually possess about it. So that's another way that you can have inaccurate responding. That's often also kind of a cover up. If somebody, like, you're always making the same choice, always buying the same thing, doing the same thing, and somebody asks you why, and you pause and you're like, I don't know why. You might come up with some reason that makes it seem real desirable. You're like, that sounds good, right? That's why I do it, not just force of habit. Do you guys know what I mean by that? Okay. All right. Self-reporting memories of events can also be very tricky when you're looking at accuracy. All right. So if you are thinking back, any sort of memory from the past continues to decay, right? Unless somehow you're repeating it or have some sort of system to keep it fresh in your mind, memory decays in many ways. So if I asked you right now, what did you wear on your 14th birthday? Some of you might go, I know exactly what I wore because I happen to have a picture frame right here of my 14th birthday and I look at it all the time. But I think for probably most of us, we'd be like, I don't know. Am I correct? Okay.
Yep.
Same thing. If I ask you, when's the last time you took your car to the car wash? Now I will say, I remember, but that's because something salient happened, right? But for a lot of people, they might go, I don't know, a month ago, never. I go every week, so I don't know, probably Friday or whatever. So our memories tend to be problem, and they're not as accurate as we tend to think that they are. This is especially true for eyewitness testimony. Elizabeth Loftus is the leading scientist on this exact fact. And so if you have somebody see something that is more charged, more traumatic, oftentimes remembering small details about that memory, you may think instinctively that you'll remember more details, but chances are you didn't. With trauma, you're going to be focused on one thing and probably one thing only. So for instance, she does this study that's pretty awesome. I could see about finding the video for it for you guys too. But it's a law class, students in law school, and it's a big like auditorium. So probably 150 students are there. And this is all rigged, but the students don't know this. The teacher is standing, the professor standing in front of the class and is by the board. And she's got like her binders and then her purse right there on the desk. And so she's lecturing and looking at the board. And then this person walks in to the classroom and is kind of walking slowly and then grabs her purse and runs out, right? And then they're being filmed. They don't know this, but they're being filmed. And so then you see people's reactions. There's actually a couple students that stand up and run after the guy. People are screaming, right? Before any of that is unpacked in terms of the fact that this was a study, they asked each person to complete a survey as to what they remembered. So was the person who walked in male or female? How tall were they? What were they wearing? What kind of haircut did they have? Did they say anything? Now, what do you guys think were the results?
Everyone had different answers.
Sure.
All over the place. Yeah. What were you saying too, Elizabeth?
Oh,
Or
sorry. I
someone-
said the same thing.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
All over the place. Yeah. Very little that came together. And in fact, some people came up with like incredible reports. He was wearing, it's like so much detail. He was wearing a red jacket with Adidas shoes, and he had a pin on the front of his jacket, and his shoes were black. I mean, like, and then you actually see, like, no, this is what it was. And so the whole point of the study is if you're an attorney, right, and you are listening to your eyewitness test, like the person who's testifying, your witness, recognize that there may be some fallibility with their report because human memory is not awesome. They were just looking at specifically what happened, and then, you know, it's traumatic, it's exciting, it's scary. So, and the other big piece is feeling confident about what you remember does not equate or guarantee accuracy, right? Have you guys ever had this moment where you're like, oh, I know this is the answer, this is where it was, or I know I left my item at X spot? You feel so confident, and then you discover that you're totally wrong. Does
Yeah.
that shake you a little bit? Like, oh, wow, I really thought that's what it was. Yeah,
Oh,
it's often surprising even for us as it happens. We're like, geez, right? But now imagine on the receiving end, the other person who's like, I trusted this person, and they were totally wrong. So anyway, self-reports. What's the moral of the story here? Self-reporting for surveys can be faulty, right? Because it's susceptible to social desirability. It's susceptible to people wanting to look good or look bad, or wanting to look like they know more than they actually do. It's also susceptible to bad memory, right? Like if people are not remembering accurately. So does that mean we don't use self-report? No, we do. We just recognize that it's got its limits. Okay. So one of the ways that we can try to continue encouraging accurate response is through the continuation of rating of products, for instance. So interestingly, there is a weak correlation between online rating and Consumer Reports rating. So what do we know? What does Consumer Reports do?
Just first thoughts, I think. A consumer report might be a little more honest considering mostly it can be anonymous, and when people are dealing with, you know, products that they buy, they tend to be a little more like, oh, this sucked, don't buy it. Whereas like I feel like if you were in the store, people might be inclined to like look at the sales representative and be like, oh, well, it was okay, but it could have been better.
Yeah. Well, in Consumer Report, if you remember from the start of our class, they have the benefit of testing multiple items that fall within the same class. So again, if you're in the market to get a sedan, they're going to test drive and really provide a report on all the same items they reviewed for each car. So then they can really standardize their procedure and compare apples to apples and provide you with the best recommendation. As a consumer, I don't know about you, but when I decided to buy my iPhone, for instance, I didn't buy every single kind of smartphone and then decided, yep, this one's the best, so I'm going to keep this one. No, I am a follower of the masses, and I'm like, well, I guess I'll get that. I don't know. And plus, I don't want to learn Samsung. They all seem very hard. Honestly, little tidbit about Dr. Yeah, you have a Samsung. Get that out of here. Seems hard. And do you not have a case? Your phone didn't look like it had a case.
No, my phone's seen better days.
That just seems like that's asking for trouble. No case on a phone. Okay, now new poll. How many of you do not have a case for your phone? Raise your hand or give a thumbs up. Okay, so most people have a case. I didn't see a single missing people. You have a case. Okay, so Kyle, are you alone? You're the only one without a case?
I'm okay with that. I'm okay being unique. I don't have a phone, and I'm okay with that. I have a phone case.
Unique, really playing Russian roulette with your technology.
Yeah, I like living on the edge. What can I say?
There you go. Okay. So Consumer Reports, again, it's about doing the research on all items and then providing really the results of that study, of their study, right? Whatever the specific product they were looking at, and determining which one wins out or shows the best rating. Consumers, though, will purchase one thing and they will give their review of that one thing, okay? So you can see here, this is a review of the Amazon stick or Fire Stick, I think is what it's called. You could see, again, what he says. Earlier this month, my TV entertainment included Dish, 200 plus channels, Silent TV, Turbo Internet, Amazon Prime. After doing research, I bought 3 Amazon Fire Sticks with the voice remote, canceled Dish, upgraded the internet, added Sling, added standard Hulu, CBS All Access, and I still get 96% of the channels that I watch, added Prime Music, blah, blah, blah. Saved over $700 a year compared to what I paid this past year. Okay. Cutting the cord and then getting Amazon are worth it. They work well. Once you get used to knowing what shows plays, a no-brainer. Okay. Bless you.
Thank
Now,
you.
this is providing a great review of the Fire Stick TV in terms of cost, right? Cost effectiveness between satellite dish. So, but Consumer Reports may have tested out other systems, right? Like Fire Stick, maybe the Apple TV would be another one. And see, I'm already out of my breath here. Does Google have one?
I think so.
Anybody? Like a Google Pod of or Chrome TV, something like that. Anyway.
Oh yeah, Chromecast. Yeah.
Chromecast. Okay. So they would have reviewed those 3 products and determined which one is better in terms of user interface, which one, right? They would have done a much broader study. So all to say, a single consumer's review does not necessarily relate to the larger research at large, okay? So, but look at this, 33,000 people read this review and thought it was helpful. Not everyone has access to Consumer Reports. This is far more accessible, so people are going to trust it more, even though it may not be 100% accurate. All right, so switching gears from self-report surveys to now observational data. So when you're looking at behavior and making observations of it, okay? So observational research is claims that are based on observational data, right? So you are observing a specific behavior out of your participants and then making claims, frequency claims usually based on that. So this is a specific study where they ended up researching the number of words that were spoken over the period, I want to say it was 1 week. Let's see. This is the estimated number of words spoken per day for female and male study participants across 6 samples. You can see the samples are right here. So you could see the year that it was done in, the location, how long they measured it for. So that's, again, the average day, average words per day. The age range of the sample. You can see the split here between men and women. And then the estimated average number of words spoken per day. So the average is the first number, and what's in parentheses is the standard deviation. So what is this chart telling us?
This chart is telling us the amount of people that were in each sample, and it's telling us the year that the sample or the test was taken, the location.
So specifically the estimate average number of words per day.
Yes.
What's the message? What are they what are you concluding by reading this last line here?
That women talk more than men.
Mind blown. Except look at it line by line per study. What do we think? Is it a massive difference?
No, not really. Also in 2001, the 5th one, men totally crushed it.
Crushed it.
So much.
And now, how much validity do we give to that study? Someone else than Kyle, who's an excellent tutoring one-on-one here.
Yeah.
What is something that may make you question the results of study number 5?
Well, every year it like varies and it can go back from men and women. Like in 2004, women had over 2,000 word lead on men, but then in 2003 it was pretty close with only like 230 words more.
Okay. So it sounds like you think based on the year that the study was done has an impact on the numbers. Okay, sorry, I'm just now seeing the chat. I have a case. Oh. Okay, I'm just now seeing the phone case. Whoops. Lauren, you said very small sample size. Can you say more about that?
They included only 7 women and 4 men to represent like that age group, and just for the study, that's just such a small number to represent like a full country. I don't know.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Again, who are these 4 guys? Maybe they're the world's most extroverted individuals on the face of the planet. But if I'm thinking about external validity, meaning how much is this data going to generalize to my larger population, what would be my larger population? The US population, specifically then this is for women and men. How can I say that a sample of 4 men is representative of all men in the United States? Especially since this appears to be very much an anomaly. Okay.
Oh, the standard deviation's huge.
It's massive. So what does that tell us?
That each or every single person had a much different result.
It was a very varied sample. There was a very large range, which means you could have a really low talker and then I don't even know, somebody who's talking constantly and yeah, who cannot stop talking. Okay. The chart does have a lot of info on it. Yes. So that's the part here that we want to try to glean from. So we have to be careful when we're looking at this specific data when it's based on observation of behavior. So this one specifically, they had an electronically activated recorder to observe what people say in everyday conversation. So that's how they measured it. It had a microphone and a digital recording device. And every 12.5 minutes, it recorded for 30 seconds. And then the research assistant transcribed what the person says while it was being recorded. They found that despite stereotypes of women being more talkative than men, women did not use significantly more words than men as recorded. The 2 values here, the 16,215 versus 15,669, there was not a significant difference between those numbers. They're obviously different, but it is not a significant difference. So that was the result of their study. Okay. This is another example of observational data. So observing hockey moms and dad. So in Canada, oftentimes there's this message, and actually in the US, in Michigan especially, I would say that the same is true, that parents act more aggressively at youth ice hockey game. In fact, I think we could substitute most youth sports, like soccer comes to mind, where parents get really into it. And so researchers wanted to know, is that actually true or is it just a myth, right? So they observed a sample of hockey games and recorded the frequency of both negative and positive behavior. And I think we talked about this a little bit in this class, like how do we notate like what is positive versus what is negative? Now, this particular study found that 64% of parents' behavior was actually positive and only 4% was negative. So the results did not support the reports in the media, okay? Why might that be?
Well, from our great TED Talk that we had the other day, one newscaster could have went to a game, saw a dad absolutely freak out and just go crazy. And then it was like, oh, we should write about this. Right. And then they generalized it to, oh, at youth hockey games, parents are very emotional.
Exactly. Well, and I think it's also our tendency to notice more like loud or shocking behavior. So that might stick out more in our mind. So out of 100 behaviors that you saw in a span of an hour, if 4 of them were negative, where it was like cussing or I hate you, those might stand out more than all the other ones. You're like, yeah, go, you can do it. There's so much more of those. But they might not stand out in quite the same way. So you're walking away with an inaccurate perception of what's going on. Now I have another example about eating dinner here, but I think we all get the point. All right.
Oh,
This is another one. Yeah. So making reliable and valid observations can be threatened by observer bias. So observer bias is when observers see what they expect to see. Okay. There's obviously advantages and disadvantages of behavior, observing behavior in doing research, right? Watching what people do gives us an insight as to what they truly are doing, as opposed to a self-report measure where they could kind of lie about it. So now this particular one, this is the video, okay? So imagine this guy here, okay? Sometimes your expectation influence your interpretation. So if you had seen this guy who's in his like mid-20s was being interviewed, but before viewing the video, half of you were told that the man was a graduate student and half of you were told that he was a criminal, do you think it would influence your opinion of this man?
Yes.
Yeah.
You would look at him with a certain level of bias based on the other information.
I will say, if someone told me that he was a criminal, I would definitely think he was like a hacker, because he doesn't look like he could do a violent crime.
You're like, you don't look tough. Those fingernails are too clean. You take care of yourself. Yes. Okay. Again, there can very much be observer bias. This happens all the time, right? We almost look for what we think is happening, right? It's almost this like foregone conclusion, or you're predicting, or a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right. Observer effect is when participants confirm the observer's expectation, okay? So there's several examples of that. The bright and dull rats, so those were back in experiments that were all about behaviorism. You would have these mazes that rats would have to go through. And then you would have maze bright mice, or maze bright rats. Oh my gosh, it's hard to say. Or maze dull rats. So undergrads were given 5 rats and they were told to see how long it took the rats to learn to run a maze. Each student was given a randomly selected group of rats. Half of the students, though, were told that their rats were bred to be maze bright. Not true, but they were told that. And half of them were told that they were bred to be maze dull. The rats were actually all genetically similar, but the maze brat rats ran the maze faster each day with fewer minutes, whereas the maze dull rats did not improve their performance over several days of testing. This particular study really highlights that sometimes the observer's expectation can actually influence the behavior of those that they are observing. So again, the way you treat them will impact the way they perform. All right. Had you guys heard about this Clever Hans?
No.
Okay. This is kind of another funky one. Okay, so it's a horse who could add, subtract, multiply, and divide at least as well as a 5th grader. Okay. He was tutored in simple math. The trainer was not the only person who could get Hans to do this type of math. And the researchers suspected that he was picking up on subtle nonverbal cues from his questions, so that one person whisper the first part of the problem in Hans' ear and a second person whisper the second part of the math problem. Neither questioner knew the correct answer because they only knew the part of the problem that they whispered. Hans could not answer these kinds of math problems. So do you guys get that? So they were given them, they would say like, what's 3 plus 4? And based on these subtle nonverbal cues, he would get it correct. But then if they had 2 researchers or observers, one person would say 3 plus and the other one would say 4. They didn't know what each other said. They couldn't give any nonverbal cues to the horse. And then it showed that actually he didn't know the answer, right? So he was actually quite skilled, still a very skilled horse at detecting nonverbal cues, but not at doing mathematics. Okay. I just love these stories. Like, who came up with that? Who was like, my horse is real smart, he can do math, check this out. Like, how do you start that? It's interesting. So how do we go about preventing observer bias and observer effect? That's obviously the goal, right? We are seeking for the most accurate and valid of research that we can get. So one is you can use kind of a cookbook approach, which is clear rating of instructions. So let's see, how can we do this? If you're, if the persons who are actually like rating, right, they're the observer raters, you want to make sure that there's very clear instructions for them so that everyone is measuring the same thing. So all of the information that's given, you're training all of your observers on it so that you have the most accurate information. You can also use a kind of code book as opposed, did I say cookbook earlier? I think I may have. I meant code book. Apologize. You can define all of these so that it's quick to write the answer rather than writing it all out. And again, you're like sticking together with your other coders so that you know the response that you're going for. And then this is the biggest piece. Use massed research design, meaning you have people in different groups, but you don't know which group they're in so that you are acting as a blind researcher. So you are not somehow skewing the research based on your own response or what you expect them to have. So that means the observers do not know, again, which condition the participants have been assigned. That's ideal. This is done also in experimental studies. The researcher, I mean, who is noting participants' symptoms does not know whether they're in a placebo group or in a treatment group. So they try to stay out of it as much as possible.
So wait, for that, the people who do know, like the different, like of what group the people are in, they just leave so they don't influence it?
So the idea is that it just means that they're not present, that everybody has been either assigned a participant ID number, and that I, as the researcher, I don't know whether participant 312 is getting a placebo or not, right? I can look it up. It's in a database. I have access to it, but when I interact with them, I don't know who they are.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So the other piece is reactivity. So that also implies or creates a risk for validity and accuracy. And it's the idea that participants react differently when they're being watched, okay? That you somehow change your behavior in some way because you know someone else is watching you. Have you guys ever noticed that or experienced that yourself?
Yep.
Isn't that called the Hawthorne effect?
Yep. So what's a quick example of that?
Hawthorne effect is when a manager has an open window watching all of their like workers doing, sewing. He's watching them, so they think that they have to be working harder. But if the blinds are down, people are a little bit more relaxed, and then things are a little bit slower.
Right. Okay, good. What's another way you guys have experienced that in real life, day to day, that you behave differently if you're being watched?
Like, I guess going from like the shopping cart example,
Okay.
I've seen like if people are closer to the store and there's a lot of people there, they won't, oops, I pushed it away from me and I'm gonna, drive away. They'll usually, grumble and just push it back into the cart return.
So if you are acting in front of a crowd, that may change your behavior if you're being watched that way.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think whenever, if you're used to driving alone and all of a sudden you drive with someone in your car, you're like a little bit more mindful of like, mind your 10 and 2s and, backing up. I don't usually back up. Or what's even worse, this is another car example. if you're backing up and there's people standing outside watching you, like maybe you're just leaving. This is back 2019 when we were gathering. And then you're leaving a get together and people are like waving at you, and now they're all watching you as you back up, and you feel, I don't know, this is just, I'm coming up with these driving example. Maybe it's my own anxiety, but I feel like that's another one where I am going to behave slightly differently than I usually do. Maybe I'll overly look over my shoulder, make sure that everything is good, where usually I'm like, just back her up, it's fine, right? Okay. So that's the concept of reactivity. And interestingly, they've shown that even cockroaches can behave differently when they're around other cockroaches versus just on their own. So what are some ways that we can try to mitigate that? So one of the solutions is to blend in. So somehow have an unobtrusive observation, like a mirror, right? If you're behind a two-way mirror, so somebody can still observe what's happening, observe the given behavior, but the people they're observing don't know that there's somebody back there observing them. The other one is to wait it out, right? This is the idea of Jane Goodall, who did all her research on chimpanzees. She just spent a ton of time. She blended in and really made it so that they got to a point where they were no longer noticing her. She was just part of the group. What did I want to tell you about the ear study? I think that's just, they're not noticing that you're recording because it's just that machine like we talked about. And then the third one is to measure the behavior's result. So instead of actually measuring behavior, sometimes researchers obtain unobtrusive data by measuring traces of a behavior. So if you're interested in the amount of types of junk food that college students eat in the dorm, instead of asking them or like creepily watching them as they're ordering, you could just go look for the wrappers in the trash can, right? So looking at garbage is kind of this, that's like the leftover piece of it, the trace of it. Okay. All right. Ethics always goes back to ethics. Is it ethical to observe the behavior of others? Well, it depends. Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it's not a problem. Like I think going to a grocery store and sitting in a parking lot, probably not a big deal. If you want to even sit by a drive-through and see how many items people are grabbing for food, probably not a big deal. But the question is always, are you observing something that is publicly accessible, or is it privately held? Again, a public restroom, I would still count that as a private space, right? We don't want to be observing people in private spaces. I don't want any of you guys to be like, I want to see if families eat together in the evening, so I'm just going to go up to the window at night to see if they're having dinner together. Don't do that, okay? That is infringing on their privacy. You also cannot video record people without them knowing. That is a clear violation of their privacy. So that is not okay either. So you just always have to balance out pros and cons, right? What is the benefit of me engaging in this behavior, and what is the cost to my participant for me observing their behavior? Okay, make sense?
Yep.
These are types of survey services that you guys can use. Obviously, SurveyMonkey is probably the most widely used online right now, and usually students will use that. Google Forms are super handy as well because you can gather data from that very quickly. And again, that's very cheap, or free, I should say. Excuse me, a lot of these other kinds I have not personally used, but if you have some interest on that, you can certainly go about it. This will be something for you guys to keep in mind when we deploy your surveys for your research paper. And then when you think of where am I going to get my participants, this will be something else to keep in mind. Frankly, we're probably going to use Facebook mostly. In the past, I had students go to their own classes and ask students to participate, but not all of you guys are on ground, and then you're passing paper or asking for email. I don't know, I'm just thinking of with COVID right now, that's kind of tricky. So I think Facebook is probably your best way, or Instagram, or maybe just even email to get access to participants for your study.
Something that I did last, like way back, the RA, I just emailed everyone on my floor. And so
that's a great idea.
people easily.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. Now my only question with that is it limited to like this is a floor of only guys who
Yeah.
are sophomores?
And so that's why I think that with us in our groups for our later one, it
Yeah.
kind of balances out because I'm with 3 girls. So
Well, the rules probably because I think you may be the only, well, you and Christopher are the only guys in the class. So yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. So that is what I've got for you today. Any other questions?
I have like a
No.
question for after class.
Sure.
Awesome.
So remember next week is the exam. You want to make sure to review our past lectures, take a look at your textbook. Again, I'm not going to be asking trick questions. A few of you guys know me because you've taken class with me. I'm pretty straightforward. I'm very student focused. I want you guys to succeed. So if there's ever something on the exam that you're not sure about, or you're like, what do you mean here? Please shoot me a text. I'll have my phone number there at the top of the exam and I'm there to help. So, but know that I won't answer anything that I wouldn't answer in a class. Meaning if you're like, what's the answer to number 2? It's not going to fly. I'm not going to do that either. I want to support you guys, but that would not be a way to support you. All right. If there's nothing else, then I guess I will see you all next week for the exam. And
Thank you.
no problem, Lauren. I'll hang back, Elizabeth, if you still have a question. I'll just stop recording.
Okay, thank you.